What's up, guys, and welcome back to Mile vs. the Movies week number 11. This is the 11th week of my Film a Day challenge I've been doing for 2019. No house business for today's episode, so we're just going to jump straight into our first movie. The first film I watched this week, on Sunday the 10th, was They Live, on Blu-ray, directed by John Carpenter, from 1988. For our plot summary, a drifter gets a pair of sunglasses that let him see the horrifying truth of the world around him. On to the pros now. Firstly, I really like the premise of the story. I think it's quite a good sci-fi plot. It's a very interesting plot. I quite like it. I feel like it's something that's been done in other things as well, but this is probably the film that is not just the film, but it's probably the story that's a most well-known version of it. It's got kind of elements of the invasion of the body snatchers, that kind of thing, and I really like it. It was a really, really fun movie, and a really interesting story. Secondly, as my next pro, I actually think Roddy Piper is a pretty good lead. I don't think he's a tremendous actor. He's alright, but he's quite believable as a normal guy. And that's what he needs to be in this. He's not like a big part of the story as a whole to begin with. He's kind of has this world thrust upon him. And he does quite a good job of conveying that, I think. And he's quite a likeable guy, Piper. That might be because I like him outside of, movies as well. So I'm like, hey, Piper, way. For my next pro, I quite like the social commentary that's running through this. If you couldn't tell, this film, like all sci-fi, basically any sci-fi film, it's probably being used to comment on something. Usually, most good sci-fi films are usually commenting on something going on in the real world. Not always the case. I don't think Star Wars is really, making a big comment on anything. Except blowing up planets is bad. Don't blow up planets. That's the plot of Star Wars. But They Live obviously has quite a bit of social commentary going on in it. And I quite like it. It's quite fun, actually. And as my last pro, I really like the monster design in this. As you can see on the poster that I'm using in the video, it's a really interesting design. It's quite unnerving and quite creepy. And every time it's on screen, it has the effect it's meant to have. Every time it's on screen, I'm like, oh no, no thanks. That's how I react every time it shows up. So it does its job really well. Moving on to my cons, I've got a couple. Firstly, I think it's maybe a bit slow at times. Certain bits maybe go on a bit too long. Ironically enough, there's a very famous fight scene in this, which I think is one of the longest fight scenes ever in a movie. That bit doesn't feel too long to me, but other bits, like before we kind of get thrust into what the movie's actually about, I feel like that bit's maybe a bit too long. We're just kind of walking around and going places and doing stuff. I get why it's there, to set up that it's, to kind of lull you into the thing of everything's perfectly normal before you get slapped in the face by what the film's really about. But yeah, it just felt a little bit slow at times to me. For my second con, I feel like you could do a little bit more with the premise than there actually is. I know this might get me some flack for saying this, and it's not something I normally say, but I think They Live, you could remake it into like quite a different movie, and it'd be a very good movie as well. Because there's not much done with the whole premise as there could be. Like, we get bits of certain things where I'm like, I want to see more of that. I'm not going to say what they are, because I don't like, I'm big no spoilers. But there's some elements I'd like to see a bit more of. Maybe John Carpenter planned to have them, and, it's only an hour and 34 minutes long. So maybe if the film was a bit longer, maybe you could have had more of those elements in that. For my overall rating, I give They Live an 8 out of 10. Do I think you should see it? Yeah. It's quite fun. It's a pretty good sci-fi film. It's easy to see why it has become such a iconic cult movie. It's very enjoyable. It's got quite a good sense of humour as well. I think it's got quite a few good humorous moments in it. It was a really enjoyable movie. For my next film this week, I watched Death at a Funeral, on Amazon Prime, directed by Frank Oz from 2007. Yes, this is directed by the guy who played Yoda. For a plot summary, a family comes together for a funeral, and a farcical comedy of errors unfolds. So this is a comedy. As always with comedies, I don't have too much to talk about, but let's see what I do have to talk about, shall we? Firstly, for my pros, I think it's pretty funny, which is kind of what you're looking for in a comedy. It's not amazingly funny. We'll kind of get into that later, but it's a pretty funny movie overall. Like, the jokes land when there are jokes. Well, most of them land. I don't remember not laughing. I remember laughing, so that's good. And for my second pro, I think the cast is pretty decent. They're pretty good performances from quite a lot of the people in it. There's Matthew McFadden, or is it Fadian? I'm not sure how you pronounce that surname. He's in it. Peter Dinklage is in it. Andy Nyman, who we also saw in Ghost Stories, he's in it. There's Keely Hawkes is in it too. She's pretty good. Just, it's a pretty good cast overall. And Rupert Graves, who is Lestrade in Sherlock, he's here in it, and that kind of made me smile. So the cast's pretty good. Going on to the cons now. Firstly, I feel it's a tad predictable. And I mean that in the sense of something like jokes are set up and you know what the punchline's going to be the minute the setup's done, and I'm not very keen on that. I'm not expecting, every joke to be like a subversion of a trope, but there's one thing in particular that comes up 3 times in the movie, because of course it does. You have your rule of threes in comedy, and it's kind of a played out joke, I think. But yeah, it just feels a bit predictable at times. Not that that's necessarily bad, but in this case it kind of was, because I was like, well, I know what's happening in this setup. The minute the setup took place, I was like, I know what's happening here. And it did happen. Sort of tying into that as well, I don't think this film has the ideas for its runtime. Now, it's an hour and a half long, like most feature-length comedies do tend to be in that like hour and a half kind of region. This film, I think, would work better as an hour-long thing, maybe. It doesn't have enough jokes to fill its runtime. And that's kind of a shame, because it's got like some fun ideas and it's got some interesting bits in it, but yeah, it doesn't have the time. Well, it doesn't have enough to fill its time, it feels like. For my overall rating, though, I gave this a 6 out of 10. Still pretty enjoyable. Do I think you should see it? Yeah, probably. It's alright. It's a perfect kind of film that's on Film 4 at 9, so you'll watch it. But I'm not sure if I would necessarily recommend you going out and hunting it down. If you've got Prime, watch it, because, it's part of your membership, you may as well use it. For my next film, on Tuesday the 12th, I watched 7 Psychopaths on Netflix, directed by Martin McDonagh from 2012. For a plot summary, a screenwriter, struggling to write his new script, is dragged into his friend's world of dog kidnapping after he takes a mafia leader's pooch. Wait, is he a mafia leader? I'm not quite sure. I think he's just a gangster. Anyway, he steals a criminal's dog. Firstly, the pros. I think this film was very funny. I really enjoyed it. It's got quite a interesting sense of humour that I really enjoyed. A lot of the jokes in it made me laugh quite loudly, so yeah, it was a really good comedy, I thought. For an next pro, I liked the presentation. I liked how certain things are filmed, but also I liked, as we're introduced to the titular 7 psychopaths as we go through the movie, we get like a typewriter typing up psychopath number 1 on the screen. Just little things like that. Thirdly, for my last pro, I really enjoyed quite a lot of the performances in this, but in particular, I'm gonna say I really like Christopher Walken in it. Christopher Walken's kind of one of my favourite actors. He's maybe like, I don't know if he's one of my favourite actors, he's maybe like my guilty pleasure actor, except he's good. I don't know how quite to word it. Maybe like a cult actor that I like. He's not good in everything, but when he's good, he's great. And I think he's pretty good in this. I also enjoyed Sam Rockwell in it. He's really fun. And I like Colin Farrell in it too, because I like Colin Farrell. He's great. He's in a lot of films I really like, I'm beginning to realise. He's in a lot of good movies, Colin Farrell. On to my cons now. Just the one. I think the tonal shift this movie has about halfway through, not necessarily for everyone. I liked it. I kind of like the way it's... This film's almost like two movies combined, and I like that. And that kind of ties into the plot a little bit. But I can see that not necessarily being to everyone's tastes. For my overall rating, I gave 7 Psychopaths an 8 out of 10. I just realised every film I've watched that's got a number between 1 and 10, the score has never matched the title of the movie. Do I think you should see it? Yeah. I was really fun. I enjoyed it. I know, for example, the script for this, it's quite interesting. There's this thing called the Blacklist, which is a list of like unproduced scripts, and they have awards every year, and this film was listed in their top 10 of I think like about 2009 or that, and then it got made into a movie because it was really good. It's a really good film, and I really enjoyed it, and the dialogue's good, the acting's pretty good. It's just a quite fun movie. Following that, on Wednesday the 13th of March, I watched Layer Cake on Netflix, directed by Matthew Vaughn from 2004. For our plot summary, a cocaine dealer is given 2 tasks by his employer: to locate a missing girl and to sell some bulk of pills. Neither proves easy. Firstly, my pros. I think this film's really nicely filmed. Firstly, there is some really cool cinematography in this. Lots of impressive pans, lots of nice angles for things, lots of just really good shots in this. This is a really well filmed movie. Secondly, I think this film has some really good performances. I think Daniel Craig's pretty good in this. This is supposedly the film that landed him the role of James Bond, and it's easy to see why. He has a kind of Bond-like quality to his character as the film develops. I think the filming helps as well. The filming is very James Bondy. Well, at least the more modern Bonds, I think. Then Matthew Vaughn went and made Kingsman. They should have just given him Bond. You would have made a ton of money, guys. All I'm saying. Not that Bond worries about making money. I wonder if the Bond films make much money. I don't really know. Anyway, back on track. Tying in with the good performances, Colm Meaney. Oh, I love Colm Meaney. And he's good in this, and I really like him. I'm discovering as I go through all these films I'm watching, I have like a group of actors I really like. Like, I like Colm Meaney, I like Colin Farrell, I like Michael Smiley, I like Christopher Walken. You know, just like, not necessarily the like main stars or anything, but like the more character actors I really like. And there's a whole crowd of them, and I love them. Speaking of actors I really like, this film also has bonus small part Tom Hardy in the background. He's hardly in the movie, but every time he's on screen I'm like, "Way, Tom Hardy." He's pretty good. You know, yeah, he doesn't have much to do, but I'm just a big Tom Hardy fan, so I was quite happy when he showed up. I was like, "Yay!" Because I didn't know he was in this. This kind of just ties into what I was saying earlier, this next pro, but this film's really well presented visually. It's just really, on a technical level, it's a really well made film. Just the way, I think this was more when I wanted to talk about, there's a lot of like really nice transitions in this, particularly in the opening. You see a lot of really good transitions from scene to scene. Those are really, really good, and I really like them. And as my last pro, I really like the story of this. This is apparently based on a book, and I kind of want to read the book. It's really good. I like things about crime. I think that's probably come across by now. But I think this is a really good crime story. For my cons, I have one. I'm not much of a fan of the romance subplot in this. It's kinda feels tacked on. Maybe it's more developed in the book this is based on. It just doesn't work too well for me. Because the main romantic character, I think she appears in all of 4 scenes, but it's quite an important part of the story. I would maybe like to see her a bit more developed. That being said, I still really enjoyed this movie. For my overall rating, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I just realised again, this is spoiling my dream to have a film where the numbers match the score. because Layer Cake on the DVD has like a license plate font, so it's L4 year CAC free. And I didn't give it a 4 or a 3 because it's too good. Or 4 plus free. Yeah, it's an 8. I really liked it. Really well filmed. Should you watch it? Yes, because it's really good. It's really well filmed. It's really well made. I really liked it. On Thursday the 14th, I watched Roma on Netflix, directed by Alfonso Cuarón from 2018. For our plot summary, we follow a live-in maid in Mexico and the middle-class family she works for in 1970 Mexico. From my pros, I think this film has some pretty good scenes in the final 40 minutes. I think this film's got some really good and powerful scenes towards the end. For my second pro, I think the lead actress who plays Cleo, the maid, who is I'm feeling brave. I'm gonna try and pronounce this name. Yalitza Aparicio. Make sure to tell me how wrong I am. I think that might be right actually. But anyway, she's pretty good. She's actually a first-time actress. This is apparently her first film role. It's quite interesting actually. She was qualified as a teacher and she had 8 months off before she, started work as a teacher. So she auditioned to be in a movie, and then she was really good. She's a really good actress. For my next pro, I think the big crowd scenes in this movie are quite impressive. There's a lot of sequences in this where we have like 100, 150 people all running about on camera. That's always impressive, For my cons, I feel bad and I feel like I'm going to get people yelling at me. I think the opening of this film, and to be honest, the film as a whole, is one of the most dull things I've ever watched. The opening hour plus, I feel like nothing happens. Things do happen, but not anything that makes me go, oh wow. I was super bored. I wasn't interested in it. I don't think it's that interesting a movie as a whole. Tying into that as my next con, very little happens in this. I stick by that. I feel like this film could be an hour 45 and you would still have plenty of time for filler. I wasn't impressed by it. For my next con, I've got the camera movement in this movie. This movie won Best Cinematography. I don't see why. Most of this movie, there's a lot of camera movement, and most of it is the camera pans to the right, and then, get ready for this, we then pan to the left. And all I can think is, this is the same guy who directed Children of Men and Gravity. I didn't like Gravity. That had all kinds of crazy camera stuff going on. This film just has the camera panning left and right, like we're watching a security camera feed, or he's sitting on top of a Roomba. That's all I can picture in my head, is Alfonso Cuarón sitting with a camera in Mexico City on top of a Roomba. This film won Best Cinematography. I feel like I just don't see it. There are some shots in it, I'm like, that's quite nice, But nothing that makes me go, wow. Like, Gravity. I didn't enjoy that movie. I thought the movie was boring. But it was very well filmed. It was very impressive. So I get that winning something like that. This film, I don't see it. And for my last con, I think this started me off on a bad foot with this movie. So you load this movie up on Netflix. The first thing that comes up on screen? A special graphic to tell you it's the winner of the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival. I was like, my god, that just kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. I was like, films don't open up with Academy Award winner Olivia Colman at the start of The Favourite, do they? Because that's what a crazy person would do. Why would you do that, Netflix? That really put me off the movie. The minute that came up, I was like, oh, that's a bit braggadocious. For my overall rating for Roma, I give it a 5 out of 10, and I feel like I'm being quite generous for that. I'm basically giving it a 5 out of 10 because the acting was alright, and there was nothing wrong with the film technically. Technically, it is a well-made film. Everything else didn't impress me. I don't see what people saw in this movie. I feel like the same way I feel about Lord of the Flies, where that's like a classic that won the Nobel prize for literature, and I think it's one of the worst books ever written. I hate it. With this, it's even worse because I get it. I get what things are representing. I get the plot. I get, like, oh, this is to show... I'm trying to think of an example. We get, like, some scenes happen and other scenes happen to show, like, a duality between the maid's life and the family's life. We get stuff like that happens. I'm like, I get that, right? But it's not interesting. I really wanted to like this movie, and I'm now thinking I don't like Alfonso Cuarón, and I'm really disappointed, because Children of Men, that was a great movie, and Gravity and Roma, I both disliked. But I think I like Gravity more than this. And I don't mind films with subtitles, I don't mind films in black and white, I don't mind arty films. There's nothing about this film, as the film is, that I should dislike. I'm actually angry at not liking this movie. I think that's the honest truth. I'm more angry that I didn't like it, because this is the kind of film I should love. And I didn't. It was bad. It was really, really bad. And I'm really, really disappointed. That's all I can say. I'm really disappointed about it. Following that, on Friday the 15th of March, I went to see the Lego Movie 2 in the cinema, directed by Mike Mitchell from 2019. For our plot summary, in the sequel, our heroes face an alien threat from the planet Duplo. That's all I'm giving you. I like being vague. I didn't know much about the plot of this movie going into it, and I'm glad I didn't. For my pros, firstly, I think this film's pretty funny. It's quite fun, it's quite self-aware. It's just a very fun, very silly time. For my next pro, this film is really nicely animated. Now, the first Lego movie is actually one of my favourite animated films, and part of that is all the attention to detail in the animation. For example, you get these, I can't remember what they're called, but basically motion blurs in animation, where you get these frames in a movie where it's just a line gets drawn, or like the colour, to show like a character moving really quickly, so you just like a streak of colour across the screen. Those are done in the Lego movie, and they're done by having a streak of Lego blocks. The attention to detail in the Lego movie is incredible for something that could have just cynically been, you know, a bunch of crap thrown together and thrown on the screen. Kind of like what the Playmobil movie looks like. That film looked really bad. The Lego movie was amazing. And this film follows in its footsteps really well. It's really well animated. It's got a lot of nice attention to detail. It's really good. And for my pros, I think the music's pretty good. This has quite a few musical numbers in it. The first one didn't really. Just kind of everything is awesome. This film has kind of a few musical numbers, and they're actually pretty good. They're quite catchy. They're, you know, just kind of catchy pop numbers, like you would expect from the Lego movie at this point. But yeah, they're quite fun. The lyrics are quite fun. There's one in particular with our main villain's musical number. It's pretty great. You know, villains always have a great song. In like Disney movies, people always talk about how great the villain songs are. I really like the villain song in this. It's quite fun. For my cons, firstly, I think this film's a bit predictable. I think that kind of falls into the problem of part of what makes the first Lego movie so strong is it has a very good and really well executed kind of twist to it. And this film has to then follow that, but the twist has already been revealed. So you already look at things through that dynamic. So you know kind of where things are going. So things being referred to certain ways aren't as surprising as they might be. Oh, that makes sense. I'm trying not to spoil what it is for anyone that's not seen the Lego movie. If you've not seen the Lego movie, go and watch it. If I was rating the Lego movie, the original, I'd give it a 9 or possibly even a 10 out of 10. It's literally one of the best animated films of all time. Wasn't even nominated for the Best Animated Picture Oscar. Yes, I'm still salty about that all these years later. I'm more annoyed about that than I am about, you know, films I highly regard not getting Oscar nods. I'm more annoyed for the Lego movie, because it deserved recognition. And for my second con for the Lego movie 2, it's not as good as the one that came before it. A lot of sequels have that problem, and I think this film had really big shoes to try and fill, and it doesn't manage it. It's still a really good movie, but it's not as good as the one that came before. That's the the problem with it, to be fair. And to be honest, I struggle to see how anyone could make a film as good as the one that came before, you know? So for my overall rating, I gave the Lego Movie 2 a 7 out of 10. Do I think you should see it? Yeah, probably. If you saw the first one and you enjoyed it, it's definitely worth seeing. It's not as good as the one that came before it, as I've mentioned already, but it is still a fun story. It's a fun way to spend, it was 1 hour 47 minutes? It didn't feel that long when I watched it, but it's a fun way to spend, a couple hours. Imagine if you have kids, I imagine they'd like it. I don't know. And finally this week, the greatest motion picture of all time. I watched, the sequel to the greatest motion picture of all time. I watched Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus on Amazon Prime, directed by Christopher Ray from 2010. For a plot summary, two prehistoric creatures clash in a battle of pure CGI and worse acting. Going over, I think for the bad movies, I'm going to start going over the bad movie credentials, explaining, why I've chosen it as my bad film. So for the case of Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus, first of all, it's an asylum film. That automatically puts you in the bad film category. This film in particular, though, is a sequel to my favourite so bad it's good movie, which is Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus. You might have seen a bit of Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus, because Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus is the film where a shark leaps out of the ocean all the way up into the sky and eats an airplane out of the sky, and it's crazy. It is a terrible movie, but it's also one of the most fun I've ever had watching a movie. And this is the sequel. Does it live up to the original's low but also high standards? Well, let's find out by talking about it. Yay! For my first pro, it's pretty funny. Not as funny as Mega Shark vs. Giant Octopus, I'm gonna get that out there. But it is pretty funny. Not intentionally. Does this film have jokes in it? I think it might, but it does say it's a comedy on IMDb. It says it's an action-adventure comedy, and I don't remember... Oh no, there is a joke! I remember the joke. Oh, I remember two jokes. There were two jokes in this. The cigar and the 10%. Neither of them were funny. But... the bits that aren't meant to be funny, they are pretty funny. You kind of get into that with the cons, but most of these are cons in a enjoyably bad way, not just in a bad way. For my second pro, that's right, there's more than one pro to this movie. I'm impressed too. I think Jaleel White is an alright actor in this. Jaleel White, if you don't know him, is probably most well known for two things: playing Urkel in a US sitcom I cannot remember the name of. It was Family Matters. And also for voicing Sonic the Hedgehog. So not exactly the peak of the acting world, but he is terrible in this. Let's put it this way, he outshines everyone else in this movie. He looks like a real actor in this movie. And thirdly, I'm actually going to compliment a technical thing that surprised me. The jungle set in this movie isn't that shabby. I was actually like, hey, that's not too bad. They probably just went and filmed in a wood. But I'm going to give them some credit. It wasn't... I was expecting a jungle sequence to be, a green tarpaulin with someone's fern put in front of it. But no, this wasn't too bad. I was quite impressed. Now, moving on to the cons. Oh, there's a lot of them. The awful acting, firstly. Now, yeah, I said Jaleel White is alright. Jaleel White is alright. That's a fun little poem. Everyone else is crap. They all have that kind of a Megalodon battles with a Crocosaurus causing massive destruction. That delivery. The I am delivering my lines now. That was me reading the IMDb description, by the way. The Megalodon battles with Crocosaurus causing massive destruction. Yeah, they all have that kind of stiff wooden delivery. Like they've just been given the line, or they're just reading the line for the first time off a card off screen. It's pretty bad, and it's also pretty hilarious. There's a big shout out to Submarine Second in Command. Is a submarine? No, he's on a ship, isn't he? There's a lot of submarines in this movie. as well. I suppose that makes sense for the shark. But the second in command of the ship, he is angry. And he is angry in every line. It's like, help financially protect your little monsters with legal and general life insurance. As you can tell, I'm reading the ads on IMDb now. I have IMDb up while I'm talking about this, in case I forget someone's name. But not for the bad movies. For the bad movies, you are getting the crappy names I make up for the characters, because they never do a good job of establishing character names in bad movies. Because they're like, a lot of them seem to have, in like the opening conversation, they'll be like, this is Gary, hi Gary. And then that'll be the only time we ever hear that character's name. But yeah, a lot of the acting's pretty bad. There's a guy I'm going to just call Crocodile Dundee but Mac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So I'm just going to end up calling him like Aussie Mac or something like that. But Aussie Mac, right? Because to me, he looks a bit like Mac, okay? He's like a crocodile guy, I guess. He's like some sort of adventurer man. There's one bit where he delivers a line, and I think he might be drunk, or he just slurred all his lines and they left it in the movie. It's like, oh, we need to put the boat back in the water, and then we gotta move the crocodile eggs to the mega shark, and you have to blow up the volcano, Urkel. And Urkel goes, did I do that? I don't think he ever says that in the movie. I was waiting for that. I was like, this bad movie has to have him say like his catchphrase from that TV show, and he never does. So yeah, I don't know why that's left in the movie, but Crocodile Mac, he's actually not terrible for the most part. And then there's Angry Woman, whose character trait is that she's could be told your character is like a complete badass, and her way of interpreting that is like, I am angry at every scene. You know, it's like she'd be in the canteen in a scene and she would be like, yes, I do want a bagel. You know, in every scene she's so angry. At all times, she's like 80% angry. But the acting's pretty bad across the board. There's also one submarine people at one point. Like one of the many submarine people. There's two of them are so bad. The two of them, I'm like, are you just people that were walking past and got roped into appearing in Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus? Because it feels like that. Like, I don't feel like you want to be here. Speaking of ropes, that's a good segue. CGI in this movie is very ropey. That's my favourite term and I'm bringing it back. It's pretty bad. It's... Thinking of all the Asylum films I've watched, is it the worst CGI so far? It might be, because there's so much of it as well. There's a lot of CGI in this movie, and none of it's particularly good. The creatures themselves are pretty bad. The shark is significantly better than the Crocosaurus. The shark isn't great. The shark looks like it's from a PS2 game. Maybe an early PS3 game if you're being generous. Crocosaurus is out of a early PS2 game. You know, where it's no one quite knows how to make the hardware work yet. It looks really bad, does Crocosaurus. Poor Crocosaurus. Like anyone wanted him in this movie. Everyone's here for the Mega Shark. There are 4 Mega Shark movies, by the way, I discovered. And I'm going to watch them all. Tying in with that, though, this film has what the first film has, where the size of the shark and the Crocosaurus, they just kind of go all over the place. They don't match. So sometimes the Mega Shark will be as big as a battleship. Sometimes its fin will be like 50 stories tall. Sometimes it'll be, 50 meters long. It's whatever. It's whatever works for the free bits of CGI we rendered. For my next con, there's this kind of lame. There's a post-credit scene in Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus. Yes, really? I don't know if it sets up a Asylum ripoff of a certain movie, because it's Crocodile Mac and Shipping Man? I can't remember. Wait, is it Shipping Man? Yeah, because it's not Jaleel White, so it's his friend who has a boat. They're sitting on the beach and then he's like, oh, I just got a call about a new animal they want me to deal with. Some sort of giant lizard in Japan. And I'm like, oh my god. Is this setting up, that character to be in the Asylum's ripoff of Godzilla. I don't know what it's called, but I assume they made one at some point. You imagine they have. Or at least some sort of giant lizard movie. Is that setting up anything? Is there like a rich, expanded mega shark cinematic universe that I'm not aware of? And if there is, please tell me, because I want to watch all of them. I want to be fully up to speed on the lore when I watch Mega Shark vs. Mecha Shark. The sequel is Mega Shark vs. Mecha Shark, which makes the Godzilla thing even weirder, because they build a Mecha Godzilla to fight Godzilla, so they build a Mecha Shark to fight Mega Shark. So is Mega Shark Godzilla in this universe of monsters? I suppose he is, because he's the constant through all 4 installments. It's always Mecha Shark versus someone else. Ah, there we go. But yeah, it was just like a bit, it's a bit lame. From an XCon, this film is very Asylum formula. So, the Asylum movies kind of follow a very basic template. So, monster shows up, monster wrecks something, monster has to be lured somewhere. This also applies for natural disasters, because the natural disaster has to be moved in some way. They think they've solved the problem, but oh no, turns out it's something even worse is happening. So we have to make up some crazy science thing to then solve the problem that we'll only mention at the very end of the movie. We already had the failed crazy science thing, so then we have the actual crazy science thing, and then that one works. So in this film, we have using a nuclear reactor to create some sort of electric wave that hits the whole of Orlando, but only affects the Crocosaurus, to then get it to end up in Hawaii. Again, the geography in these films aren't exactly the strongest point. But, for example, then the final plan in Hawaii is to use some sort of sound-emitting thing underwater to trigger a volcano to blow up and take the Mega Shark and Crocosaurus with it. Like I said, the plot's not necessarily the strong point, but yeah, it's kind of got that basic formulaic plot they all have. From an XCon, this is something I picked up on, it's quite interesting. This film has quite a lot of reused shots from other Asylum movies, or at least might be the film where they originally come from, or it might be they've been used across multiple movies. So it might just even be stock footage, because, you know, there's a lot of stock footage in the Asylum movies. But we have the same diving underwater sequences that were in Titanic 2 are in this movie, because it's a silhouetted character. So in one film it was what did I call the dad in Titanic 2? Did I just call him Dad? The dad? I think I just called him Dad on that. But the character that's him in that movie, in this, is Jaleel White. And because it's entirely in silhouette, so it's just a man swimming. To be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if you used the same clip for a woman swimming. And in Megafault, there's a particular scene of people running away from an earthquake. And that, I was always like, why are you running away from an earthquake? That's not how it works. And it's like stuff getting blown down the street behind them. That's from Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus, where they were running away from a giant crocodile. And that makes a lot more sense. But even in this movie, they used the same shot twice. Once when they're in Orlando, and once when they're in Hawaii. Because, you know, those places have identical architecture. And my last con is probably my biggest con of the whole movie. This movie is ultimately sit in the helicopter and describe what's happening in the movie. So there's another thing sort of ties into that, I'll just quickly mention. We also have the time frame doesn't make sense either. So like we'll get, phone this guy, that'll take 20 minutes. And we're no kind of clear, we cut, like the way we cut, it implies it's simultaneous and then you find out, it's actually 20 minutes later. There's a lot of stuff like that where the editing's not the best. But most of this movie is them sitting in the helicopter going, oh my god, did you see that? Mega Shark just ate the Empire State Building and stuff like that. You don't get stuff as exciting as that. But you get, the Crocosaurus is coming right this way. And Mega Shark is following him. And we never cut to the Crocosaurus and the Mega Shark. We get basically Jaleel White, Crocodile Mac, and Angry Lady sitting in a helicopter telling us what's happening. And that's probably about 40% of the film. Quite disappointing, actually, because I thought it would be more entertaining if it was, you know, terrible. I want to see the terrible CGI Crocosaurus walking around going, bah. You know, I come to this movie for your bad CGI. Don't deny me that. by having your helicopter set that was also in every other Asylum movie. You can tell they got either like an old helicopter, pod or something, because there are helicopters in every goddamn Asylum movie. They always have helicopters because they have that one set and they're going to use it in everything. I kind of admire that attitude, but at the same time, it's kind of ridiculous. So from overall rating, I gave Mega Shark vs. Crocosaurus a 2 out of 10, which is a lot better than a lot of the bad movies I've watched so far. Do I think you should watch it? Kinda. It is quite an enjoyable bad movie. Maybe I would recommend watching it more if you were maybe going to watch the entirety of the Mega Shark franchise, all 4 installments. I'm probably going to watch the rest of them. I was talking about Sharknado doing something similar with this, but I think I'll do it with Mega Shark first. What I'm kind of thinking of doing is every alternate week do the next part of the series. So like, next week, random bad film. Week after, Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark. Week after that, another random bad film. Week following that, Mega Shark versus Colossus, I think it is, with a K. I think I'll do that with Mega Shark first, and then I'll move on to Sharknado. Because there are 7 Sharknado films, I think. And that's going to take a while. That wraps up this week of Mild vs. the Movies, I think, quite well. I know what you're thinking, Fo. Wow, Mild, what are you watching today on Sunday the 17th of March? Well, I'll tell you what I'm watching. I'm watching King of Comedy, directed by Martin Scorsese, which showed up on my Amazon Prime recommendations, and I was like, oh, you're back to offering me good movies. Amazon Prime, I think, basically decided that I liked crap movies, so it was only, recommending crap movies to me. It's like, I'd go to the new releases and it'd be like, you want to watch Robert's Revenge, the evil killer doll movie, and all kinds of crappy horror films. Like, you want to watch, I'm trying to think of, the kind of crap I was getting recommended, but just rubbish, basically. And now I'm getting recommended good stuff again, so that's nice. So I'm going to watch King of Comedy, Martin Scorsese. I think it's kind of like an underappreciated film, I've heard a lot. It's a pretty good film, but not many folk talk about it, so I thought I'd give it a watch. I don't think I have anything else to say. No, I do. I have to give my film of the week. My film of the week this week has to be 7 Psychopaths. I really liked that movie. It was super fun. Now that there's nothing left to say, all I have to say is, like the episode if you enjoyed it. Comment with your suggestions for films you think I should watch, because those suggestion lists are super helpful. Maybe you'd like to subscribe to my channel and see all the other stuff I do. That'd be cool. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye. I hate doing editing.